Welcome to the first episode of Reinstate Hawaiʻi. On this program, we examine those rights reserved to the Hawaiian people by their ancestors, and we identify the remedies available in international law to restore Hawaii's status as an independent sovereign nation. This show has two hosts. My name is Kekoa Lake. I'll ask the questions you're thinking of. I am here with Henry Noa, elected Prime Minister of the Lawful Hawaiian Government, who has the duty to reinstate the nation established by King Kamehameha the Great that was put in exile in 1893. Aloha, Henry.
Aloha koa. Mahalo for putting together this podcast and making it possible so that we can get this information out to our listeners. And I hope that we are capable of completing what we started, in March 13th, 1999, this is when we began the process to reinstate our former sovereign international nation.
Oh yeah, and we've got a lot to cover today. Before we begin, though, we would like to introduce you to the sponsors of this program. In addition to receiving numerous 5-star reviews on Yelp, each of these businesses are owned and operated by Hawaiian nationals. If you are on the island of Kauai, stop by Keo's Huli Huli Chicken on Kuhio Highway in Anahola and pick up the barbecue plate. If you're traveling the Hana Highway in East Maui, when you pass the town of Hamoa, take the turn on Haneo'o Road to Koki Beach. That's where you'll find Russell's Huli Huli Chicken. You can't beat the good food and the beautiful views. Also on Maui, you'll find Sam's Roadside Takeout in Wai'ehu, where Wai'ehu Beach Road meets Kahekili Highway. Another Ono barbecue plate awaits you there. On the island of Hawaii, you'll find Uncle Robert's Night Market at the end of Kapoho Beach Road in Kalapana. This market happens every Wednesday from 5 to 10 p.m. You can enjoy some ava, choose from a wide selection of food stalls, and catch some live entertainment. If you're surfing the net, click on aoleloho.com. They sell street apparel in men's and women's sizes, like shirts, hats, and hoodies, that celebrate King Kamehameha's law of the splintered paddle. With Kamehameha Day just around the corner, you can flex like a sovereign in the right gear. That's aoleloho.com. So, Henry, today is June 5th, 2019. And next Monday, Kamehameha Day is upon us. You, me, and the listeners know the story. There was a coup d'etat of the lawful government of Hawaii in 1893 and a legal overthrow that separated the Hawaiian nationals from their duly elected representatives, their courts, and their chief executive, Queen Liliuokalani. This hewa has existed for 13 decades now. How do we solve this problem?
I tell you, I think we should start by understanding our history and how it's connected to the solution. And the solution is, I believe, is two things. One, getting our Kanaka people, first of all, to understand the topic. And the topic that we promote here to reinstate our country is looking at, of course, our history. And you stated that Kamehameha Day is coming up, right? Well, Kamehameha the Great, he was responsible for actually solidifying our position as a sovereign independent nation in this world. Okay, when he united all of the islands. And people, I want you to know that we are all related. We may have been separated by islands, but on each island, everyone practiced the same aikapu, the same laws, the same customs, the same uses and practices. And when he united us as one nation, it made it possible for us now to be recognized by other sovereign nations in the world. And that's an important facet if a people who once were recognized as a sovereign nation needs to now understand how that recognition, can be reapplied or reacquired. And over the years that I've spent, and I'm talking about beginning early 1970s, and I participated in any which way because that was a part of my emotion. That was a part of who I was. I was trying to understand why I, as a Kanaka Maoli, cannot be a national in my own country. And I realized that it was because from Kamehameha's first time to 1893, and you mentioned that we ended up, losing our sovereign recognition status as an independent nation. Okay? And the beautiful part at that time, during that January 17th event, 1893, our Queen executed international law when she issued and wrote up a protest letter. She reserved our right to exist as a nation under international law protocols. And what she did in her letter, and this is something that I myself didn't know until years later, she actually gave us the process. When in her protest letter, if you go to the bottom line, the very last line, she uses this term of art, international term of art, called reinstate. So she began the process of reinstating our sovereign independent nation back.
So you could say Queen Liliuokalani was the first advocate of reinstatement, not anyone in the 20th or 21st century. Liliu got the ball rolling.
Exactly. So when we finally realized that she had preserved our right through that action, we decided to research international law and to find out if whether or not we, the Kanaka Maolis, can utilize international law to reclaim its sovereign status. And this is when we began. We decided, and I remember, I was involved in this process beginning in the early 1990s. And we tried to first educate our people to the international law and how in this law you have certain applications that you have to fulfill so that you can qualify under those protocols for international recognition as far as working with other nations. And I say that because I think our Kanakas need to know that to open up negotiations, even with the international bodies that are there, such as the United Nations, or in Geneva, or even at The Hague, right? I realized long ago that it would be to our benefit that we have a government reinstated to its former status. Why? I believe that in law, right, when you have this continuity of acquiring the political authority that was established, is actually written out, there's documentation, evidence, hard evidence to prove, especially through you're talking over 60 treaties, that it would be to our advantage.
60 treaties with other countries.
60 treaties with other countries, it would be to our advantage. Why? There's nothing more to say. Let's put ourselves into a position so that we can now function as one body, as to acquire this status.
So, by properly invoking these specific rights, the Hawaiian people acquire this status, to go overseas and engage in exchanging recognition with other countries. So what distinguishes the efforts of Lawful Hawaiian Government from the efforts of, say, OHA, Kauai Noa, Kalahui, and the rest?
I think before we even decided to put the government together, we realized that we should actually research what our former government was actually formed as. Okay, and when we did that research, we realized that we had a body, we had a governing body set. Okay, and we're talking from the mo'i, our queen at the time, right, down to her ali'i nuis, which became the House of Nobles.
Okay.
And then we had the ali'i's, which became the part of the House of Representatives. Yeah, and then of course we have our makainana. Okay, and this was the structure that was already operating, yeah, prior to our overthrow.
So Hawaii was already a nation in the same form and function as other Western nations. It had an executive branch with a mo'i kane or mo'i wahine. It had a bicameral parliament made up of major and minor ali'i, and a court system of appointed judges.
And that's the reason why we took the time, yeah, to understand why we should restructure or reinstate those offices that existed and functioned with authority. Okay, so now we're looking at this political authority, and all we had to do was fulfill those offices, And then what we realized too is that throughout our governing history, we had several constitutions, okay? And these constitutions, yeah, actually, some people may not appreciate these constitutions, but when I look at it, I see it as a foundation establishing, yeah, our laws that is vital for us today to understand, so that we also can function within that rule of law. And it's that, I believe, it's that functionality within the laws that gives us, the Kanaka Maoli people, that inherent right to govern as a sovereign nation. So we didn't have to recreate the wheel. What we really needed to do was really understand how can we progress after we put together this body. And like I said, I started in the early 1990s. It took, I would say, about 7 years of education, trying to go around. And I remember that it was this independent group that we put together called Kauna. And we went to all islands, to all the districts, and we began educating to our people that we should understand international law and the kingdom laws so that we could progress off of them. And it's within those laws that you realize where your rights lay. Your rights as a nation, your rights as a nation. And these are the things that now you actually have to execute. You have to put into action.
So, in addition to having rights, we also have obligations. We were obliged to perform certain tasks to preserve these rights. Would you say these obligations have been fulfilled?
I think the actual functionality of our process in putting back the laws, in establishing protocols to function in the international arena, we have fulfilled those. I believe we fulfilled those obligations, which has actually provided the basis of having the ability to interact with other nations,
Okay.
Or if you want to come home, be able to interact with the existing de facto governments, the county governments, the state governments, and even the federal government. Okay? Because we have that position. Okay? And the thing that I realized over the years is that, it's sometimes people think that you can acquire sovereignty, okay, which is a political authority, or the sovereign status,
Okay.
yeah, overnight, or in a short period of time. I realized that really doesn't happen. Okay, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of organizing, and in the process, you actually want to achieve the unification of our people. And that's what I see, is that we have, since March 13th, 1999, when we conducted the elections, our first elections in November of 1999, to actually validate, those that will now be in the official government positions.
Yeah, I want to mention that Henry was able to convince Kanaka Maoli from every corner of every island to attend a convention to bring the government offices back from its state of impairment, and also to update the Hawaiian Constitution from Queen Liliuokalani's administration.
And like I said, the good part about it is we actually followed, the process that was actually executed when each constitution, was adopted. Okay, so we looked at it and we said, okay, why don't we now amend or develop an amended constitution to fit this period of time? And I can say this, some people have mentioned that, who gave us this right to make this constitution. I just want to share this. Hey, every Kanaka has a right, to fix this problem. And I've never, stated that someone else's process, is illegal or is not valid.
Yeah.
No. What I saw was we were able to get enough Kanaka Maoli people to begin the process to reinstate Hawaii. We did it with following the laws of our kingdom. And I mean, we actually went to the districts that our former government officials were representing. And we had to get, of all things, only a male, because that was the law of that time, to represent these offices. And I can be upfront with you. It took me nearly 3.5 years just to try to get to fulfill that obligation. I looked at it this way, that I saw that down the road that we would really end up with only advocates for the kingdom, because we would mature in understanding our former status required that we pursue independence. During the time when we did the reinstatement in March 13, 1999, there were at least, I would say, 30 different advocates for sovereignty that existed.
Is the use of kingdom law and international law what distinguishes Lawful Hawaiian Government from the 30 others?
That's what we realize, that if we take the effort into reinstating the former government, that we believe that we would be able to actually acquire the authority that government had, and we would be able to directly execute from that. Today, there are still kingdoms that exist. I speak to all of them, and I try to understand, okay, how is your kingdom structured? And in international law, we found out that the elections play a big role in trying to establish a political body. Okay, and that's what we did. And we continue to do that.
Since March 13th, 1999, we've held, 4 or 5 elections?
4, okay? And to tell you the truth, this year, we actually are in election year. You're talking about 2019, right? This is an election year.
Another chance to participate.
Listen, we need now to establish a government with nationals only. And it's like, every other nation. There's procedures, there's rules that you have to fulfill. These are the things that sovereign nations are made of. Okay? Not just anybody can participate.
So let's go over what makes up a sovereign nation. As I recall, there needs to be a distinct population of dedicated nationals, a functioning government of officials, and an undisputed land base with borders.
This is it's actually a part of international law, and it's actually under the Montevideo Convention of 1933, I believe. 1933 was when the international body had accepted that these were the qualifications. The reason why international law has these requirements is because territories are taken by larger, huger nations. So this became like the standard that if you were a nation conquered, then you needed to fulfill these requirements.
In order to qualify to renew past formal relations with other countries after being in a state of impairment like the Kingdom of Hawaii, that's what you needed? Those 4 conditions?
And when you really look at the conditions, right, what you're looking at is a nation developed. That's a step. And then from there, you need to take more steps. Okay? And I believe that in our government process, we've prepared those steps. We've actually executed some of those steps, such as land base. We decided back in 2006, we need to get a land base. So we went and took the island of Kaho'olawe. And in the process, it's like anything else. If you're going to go and execute a right, and you get someone who believes that it's their right, such as the United States government or the state government, well, you're running into a conflict.
Kaho'olawe. So that meant arrests and court appearances. How did that go?
Yeah, like I said, if you want to go and create conflict, well, some of the results with creating conflict is you're going to end up in a legal situation. And yes, we ended up in court. We did battle in court, and to tell you the truth, our case, is still ongoing today.
And what year did you go to Kaho'olawe?
2006.
Hello, it's 2019. Your case has been bouncing around the court system for 13 years?
Yeah, the records are all there. In fact, our first go-around, well, we ended up losing. And we appealed. And that case stayed in appeal for, I believe, 6 years. And the decision came down. And this is a Supreme Court Justice Akoba that did this decision. 56-page decision on a little old trespass. He dismissed our case, but without prejudice, which meant that he remanded our case back down to the Maui District Court, and they had to recharge and redo the case. We prepared to enter that trial, and lo and behold, our Foreign Minister, Nelson Armitage, he ended up getting acquitted, and myself, along with our representative from Hana, Russell Kaokele, we ended up removing our case out of the district court. That meant the judge had to accept our removal. And yes, they did accept our removal. What happened was 6 months later, we had to go back to the district court, right? Because the judge set 6 months after the removal date to get a status brief, okay, on what's happening with the case. Well, lo and behold, this is what happens. Nothing happened. The judge accepted our removal from the district court. We filed it at the district court, and the judge accepted it, and the prosecutor accepted it. So we were told by our standby lawyers appointed by the judge that we will be contacted, meaning that we fulfilled the obligation, we did the removal filing, and what ended up happening was that in the process of removal, we were advised to file it at the district court, and that was the wrong place.
You were trying to remove yourselves from district court and go into federal court?
That is what was explained to us when we did the filing, and it was all done that day. Now you gotta picture this. Our standby lawyers, they decided that our case didn't belong in the state jurisdiction. And it was because here in Hawaii, exercising your religious rights, the state they're not as amicable like how the federal government is. On the federal level, on the federal government is, right? They have quite a few judgments that actually support the right to practice your religious beliefs. So when we went to Kaho'olawe, right, we went there to reclaim that island, and we built a heiau there at Kaho'olawe. We exercised our religious right to go there. Because of that, right, our standby, lawyers, told us that we don't belong here. We should go to the federal court. Well, they assisted us in our filing. The judge didn't want to. They had told the judge that we should be removed out of this court. And he objected, the judge, and he didn't want a removal. And he wanted to have trial. It's been too long, you know. He went ahead and did it. Well, what happened was Mr. Armitage was first. He did his trial. And it took like about 2 hours. The judge was able to finish his trial at about 11:15. And then I was brought up. And again, my standby lawyer told him that we want to remove this case out of the district court, state courts, and take it to the federal court. He denied. He started my trial, and then my standby lawyer said, I'm going to ask that we go to lunch. The judge agreed. While in lunch, we were able to draft up our removal papers.
With the help of your court-appointed attorneys.
They assisted us, so we did the removal document. We went to the district court clerks, stamped our papers. The courts had a copy. Clerk's office had a copy. We took our copies and we went upstairs. We served the prosecutor and we served the clerk. In the process, when our case began after lunch, the judge said that he had received the court removals and that he's going to accept the removals. Basically said, well, I'm going to set, like I said, a status hearing 6 months down the line to find out the progress report. Because if you do a removal, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get into the federal court. Somebody has to do a report, and that was the prosecutor's responsibility, was to track this removal. Well, remember I was saying earlier that we did the removals, and we were told that we would get contacted by the federal government. Well, the removal process was illegal.
It was illegal?
Yeah, you cannot file on removal in the same court, the district court, when you're supposed to file a removal in the federal court.
But you guys were instructed to do so by the judge and your court-appointed lawyers.
Exactly, and the judge approved it, and the prosecutors didn't object. So where are we right now? You would think the case would be done. Well, it's not. Our case got brought back up 6 months later in the district court. Nobody knew where the papers were. The prosecutors didn't know. We had a new judge, and the new judge decided to dismiss our case with prejudice.
Finally, a judge who does the right thing.
Now, this is what happens. District court appeals our case, and they just got their appeal approved a month ago.
A month ago, May 2019, for something that happened in summer of 2006.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. Now, you know the part where I shared that the judge accepted the removal papers and the prosecutors accepted it? It's our fault. That's what they're saying. It's our fault. Well, first of all, if you're a judge and you accept a document, it can't be our fault because it's your duty to know if whether or not the file is a good file or it is not a good filing. So the question really comes down to, so who is really at fault? My standby lawyer, the judge, and the prosecutor? You know, it's interesting. Well, anyway, this is what's happening. The International Court of Appeals agrees. Intermediate Court of Appeals agree that our case should be remanded. And I'm like, hello. I think they're making one big mistake too. Huh? How can you remand something that is totally illegal? So that's a case that we will be resilient to. We will maintain our original position that Kaho'olawe, under a state law, 6K9, says that Kaho'olawe has to be returned to a sovereign governing entity, not just any old entity. So we executed to go and take Kaho'olawe based on the state's own application.
The issue at the center of the state of Hawaii versus Henry Noa is what political authority has the rightful claim to Kaho'olawe, and by extension all the lands belonging to the Hawaiian Kingdom. It's not the federal, state, or county governments, but they don't want to admit that. We'll discuss further developments in the case on future episodes of Reinstate Hawaii.
I just want to encourage our Kanaka. Listen, there is a process that's been here for 20 years. March 13, 2019 was our 20th year from the time we started. And we're not planning to go anywhere except go get our sovereign nation status.
If you found this podcast, you know about our YouTube channel. Please watch the programs here and gain an informed opinion on the reinstatement process for Hawaii. I'm Kekoa Lake.
I'm Henry Noa, Prime Minister of the Lawful Hawaiian Government. Aloha.
Hawaiʻi,